everybody, Dan Illman, Mike here, the DRF race of the day for Saturday, February the 25th, race number 11 at Oaklawn Park. It's the Grade 2, $1 million Rebel Stakes, 3-year-olds going 1 1/16 miles with Kentucky Derby qualifying points on the line. Let's take a look at this field. And when you're running for 7 figures in Derby qualifying points, the stakes coordinator really doesn't have to hustle. And we got a big field in here of 11, led by 2 Brad Cox train runners, the number 1 Verifying, the number 5 Giant Mischief.
Yeah, 2 horses. They've already shown some talent, Dan. They also both appear to have some real upside for a trainer who just feels like he's overloaded with good 3-year-olds right now. Verifying, I thought, really impressive in his 3-year-old debut, and his stablemate Giant Mischief. The last time we saw him, he didn't really get that lucky on the stretch out.
Brad Cox trains 2. Steve Asmussen trains 3, the 2, the 3, and the 4. And Bob Baffert used to train the number 6 Reincarnate. He's now with Tim Yakteen as he searches for Derby qualifying points. We throw up the Timeform US pace projector for the Rebel, and we are expecting a barbecue. Red bar fast pace. They're lined up with the 2 Powerful, the 7 Confidence Game, the 11 Frosted Departure, all expected to be on or near the lead. That's not mentioning Reincarnate, who was a pace-pressing winner last time out, Talladega, who was a wire-to-wire winner last time out, and Verifying, who's been close in most of his races.
Yeah, I thought maybe Verifying could be the key to the pace. We'll see how they decide to ride him. Ultimately, Dan, I just kind of felt like Powerful was the fastest horse early from an inside post, and I thought he would make the lead.
Verifying has that beautiful pedigree. He's by Triple Crown winner Justify and is a half-brother to the multiple Grade 1 stakes winner Midnight Bisou. He won his career debut on Travers Day at Saratoga in professional manner, and then after placing in the Champagne and not running very well in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, he did this in his 3-year-old debut, a first-level allowance at Oaklawn, going the mile with the short stretch. He beat 2 next-out winners. He got a good spot up close to the pace, and more importantly, finished it off well.
Yeah, he did. He did finish it off really well. I thought that was an impressive 3-year-old debut, Dan. He did get a great trip in that race, just sort of setting up outside Gun Pilot, who's also back in this race. And he just buried Gun Pilot through the stretch there and ran off with a pretty big figure. He showed, I thought, real potential at 2, took a big step forward last time.
The number 2, Powerful, is a son of Kentucky Derby winner Nyquist, one of 3 trained by Steve Asmussen. And the one time he was tested was in the Grade 1 Breeders' Futurity last year. It was his only race going 2 turns, and he probably had an excuse that day, breaking from post position 13, fresh off of a maiden win. His last start was pretty good at Churchill Downs. They cut him back sprinting. He was on a solid pace. And what I like about this horse is he's very tenacious.
I like that about him too, Dan. It's a real question about, how far he wants to go and whether or not he's going to get better as the distances get longer. All 3 of his starts sprinting, though, he's run well in all of those starts. They weren't particularly fast races, but they're all as a 2-year-old. He could easily take a big step forward here. Any other speed in the race that winds up going with him, it obviously only works against this horse, as he does have to improve here, but he's got a little bit of talent.
There are plenty of angles in this race pointing towards the number 3, Red Route 1. And if he goes off at close to his 10-to-1 morning line, you might want to upgrade him. He is a true one-run closer, and as you saw from the pace projector, is expected to get plenty of pace in the Rebel. That was not the case last time out in the Southwest Stakes, where he was wired by Arabian Night, one of the better 3-year-olds in the country. And the 4th-place finisher of that race came back to run a good second in the Risen Star last week at the Fairgrounds with an 89 buyer. This horse kicks in the stretch.
Yeah, he does kick in the stretch. I realized that there could be another fast pace coming from here. And I know he got wired last time by a good horse, but that pace was solid as well. And he just sat last. And, I don't want to take anything away from him. He certainly improved in that race. But everything kind of went his way other than running against Arabian Night. Then he just sat at the back. He came with a run through the stretch. He never changed leads. And it's not like it was some kind of huge finish he put in. He just, was along for second at the end of that race. He ran well. He took a step forward. Like you, if he's 10-to-1, you'll get no argument from me. But if he gets bet down off of that, I'd look for some other horses.
Like the 3, Red Route 1, the number 4, Gun Pilot, his stablemate is by Gun Runner, who was also trained by their conditioner, Steve Asmussen. He won his debut. Then he was second in the race we saw behind Verifying, and no match for Verifying that day, but he came back to win at a mile, and he did so in pretty solid fashion. This is a 2-life allowance going the short stretch of the mile on February the 4th. He sat off a pretty moderate pace, and I thought he was pretty game to run this horse down, Mike.
I thought he ran well here too. He got a great trip in this race, but I like the way he finishes it off, Dan, more than anything else. 2 back when he was no match for Verifying. They put him on the lead. That horse obviously had way more seasoning than he did, and he was just no match. I thought he ran pretty well last time, Dan, off of a really good trip. I also think he has to improve again.
The number 5, Giant Mischief, is your second choice on the morning line. He's by Into Mischief, and he's trained by Brad Cox. Now, 2 starts back sprinting at Keeneland. He got a very good trip. He saved ground, he came up the rail, and he beat Arabian Lion, a horse that hasn't come back to exactly flatter the performance. This horse did not have a good trip when odds on in the Springboard Mile. Go back in your free formulator past performances and click on that short comment. You'll get to see the whole race because he blew the start, and now, as we're going to see, this is after he made a big mid-race move to get into contention. He's on the outside, and he's very, very courageous to finish second.
Yeah, he's going to run on again at the end of this race. He, as you mentioned, that he made the big move around that final turn on the outside to get up to contention. Then it felt like he was stalling a little bit in the upper stretch, and then he sort of re-engages late, and he makes up a little bit of ground. He never looked like he was going to win, but it was still a good performance considering the poor start and the big move that he had to make from last just to get into contention. I think this horse has a lot of ability, Dan. I wonder if he's going to keep getting better as they stretch him out in distance. His first 2 starts are really impressive wins, I think, sprinting. And he's one of those horses I wonder if he really wants to go this far.
Well, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, and I'm happy you addressed it. Is Dan was a pure sprinter, graded stakes winning sprinter. Obviously, the Into Mischiefs are versatile, but I do wonder if maybe a mile, 7 furlongs will be his best distance. Reincarnate is the 6th, ex-Baffert trainee, now with Tim Yakteen. This horse has won 2 in a row, including this performance in the Grade 3 Sham Stakes. It was only a 5-horse field. Reincarnate showed his good speed to get to the lead, and he is extremely game to win over Newgate, who is off the Derby trail, unfortunately, now, but would come back out of this race to win the Robert B. Lewis with a 100 Beyer speed figure. The key, I guess, is can this horse rate a little bit off the lead, or is he just simply the speed of the speed? It's going to be a little bit tougher this time around.
I think so, too. I find it hard to knock him. I'm trying really hard not to knock him in here, Dan. He hasn't run a bad race yet. Of the 3 favorites on the morning line, this is the one that that I want least as far as the wagering goes in this race. I've never really been sold on this horse. I know he ran well last time. That's not a race that I'm a big fan of. And I just felt like he had all the best of it in there, making the lead, while his other 2 stablemates, for whatever reason, decided not to go in there. I don't know. He can win here. I won't be surprised when he does. I won't bet him.
The number 7 is Confidence Game, going on for Keith DeZormo. This is a son of Candy Ride, who all in all I thought ran pretty well last time out when 3rd in the Lecomte at the Fairgrounds. He was up and on a very solid pace that day in a race won by the deep closing Instant Coffee, one of the better 3-year-olds in the country. The 4th horse came back to win a first-level allowance with an 89 Beyer. The problem is that's his running style. He likes to be up close to the pace, and there are others in here with the same idea.
Yeah, that's one of the things I didn't like about him too. He ran okay last time, and I realized that he was closer to the pace than the 1-2 finishers were. But I still don't think he had some kind of big excuse there, Dan. I just thought he was 3rd best in that race. I liked his win 2 starts back, where once again they got a little aggressive with him. He dueled and stayed pretty gamely there. I think he's an okay horse, and he's a horse at a big price. If you like him, you should bet him. I just felt like this was a tough spot for him.
I wonder if the light bulb is slowly coming on for the number 8 Talladega, another son of Into Mischief, and a very expensive one at that. A horse that sold for $850,000 at public auction, kin to 3 black type earners and a 3/4 brother to Holiday Disguise, a solid Grade 3 stakes winner. Here's Talladega's most recent start over a wet, fast track. It's his 4th lifetime appearance. He showed a lot more speed speed in this race. He's down on the inside. The pace was solid, and he keeps on going. Maybe not the greatest field in the world. The fourth place horse is still a maiden, came back to run third with a 71 buyer, but at least a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it definitely was that. And his connections also show a little confidence in him here, stepping him right into the Rebel. With Pratt, sticking with this horse to ride him too. I don't think he can win this race the way that he won that one, Dan, going to the lead and hanging on. I personally wasn't, so taken with that win last time that I want to bet him back in this race, but I suppose he can improve again.
Event Detail, the number 9, is going to be moving from synthetic to dirt off a maiden victory at Turfway Park. That race, of course, over the poly track, and it's way too early to tell whether this son of City of Light likes dirt or not. I wouldn't say he doesn't. His one and only start on dirt came in his debut at Churchill Downs, and he faced a very fast horse that day in Corona Bolt.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to really hold that race against him really at all, Dan. His 2 starts since then, I think he's run pretty well in both of them. And I know they were on a different surface, but they were stretching out. And it feels like this is a horse who, as opposed to some of the others in here, I think he really wants a distance of ground. He was awful good last time. That pace was pretty fast. He got bumped on the first turn and lost position, but he never dropped back too far off of that pace. And I like the run that he made to get up into contention and then to go on through the stretch. I think he's good. He's got a lot of turf in his pedigree, which makes me wonder if dirt will ultimately be his distance. But at a big price, I'm going to use him in here.
I agree with everything you just said, and I think he's a sleeper at 30-1 because he might get the right setup. He acts like he wants to go all day long. His trainer, Paulo Lobo, knows what he's doing, winning with about 25% of his starters in 2022. Bourbon Bash, the number 10, goes out for a trainer, knows what he's doing. Mr. Lucas has trained his share of good 3-year-olds. This is another son of City of Light. The problem with Bourbon Bash is I wonder if he's already been exposed. He's been beaten by several of these horses already.
Yeah, I worry about that too. The starts 2 and 3 back sprinting, and I didn't even feel like he ran that poorly 2 back. I'm not going to be too hard on him for those, Dan. I get that he was no match for Gun Pilot last time. I actually felt like this horse ran pretty well in that race. They rated him early. He made the first move to go challenge for it. He made the lead in the stretch and was just kind of no match at the end. But I still felt like he ran pretty well in there, and it showed that he can stretch out. He can get a distance of ground. He's another horse at a big price. I wouldn't be, opposed to using him somewhere.
Completing the field is a gray colt, the 11 Frosted Departure, going out for Kenny McPeak. And distance is a big question for this horse. They tried to stretch him out in the Southwest last time out, and he was sort of caught between a rock and a hard place on a hard chase behind a very good horse in Arabian Night. He finished third. He was tired in the stretch. I don't think that race shows that the distance is impossible. It's just that his other couple of starts when he was in against good horses going long weren't as promising.
Yeah, that was a question that I had about him going into the Southwest, and maybe he put some of those questions to bed. He ran fine in there, a race that he really couldn't possibly win. I suppose that you could argue he ran the second best race if you wanted to. He's got a pretty tough post here and another race that has a lot of speed signed on. I feel like those things kind of work against him here, but he's a big price if you like him.
I'll be keeping an eye on him for the cutback down the road. I kind of like him as a sprinter miler. Before we get to our top selections, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for the latest DRF videos. Top pick time for the $1 million Rebel, all-important Kentucky Derby points on the line. We're both going with Verifying. I think he's a solid, consistent, professional horse who's going to get a very strong test in here. He has the pedigree, he has the connections. Unfortunately, the price isn't there for a horse like Verifying.
Yeah, you're not going to get much price on him. Like you, I just think this is a good spot for this horse. And I feel like even if he doesn't even improve off that last win, and if he just shows up and runs that well, I think he's going to be tough in here. So I didn't go against him. The 9 and the 10 are my 2 long shots to use with him.
I'm curious to see if the 4 Gun Pilot can take a step forward. He's my 4th pick in this race, but he might offer a little bit of value after beating Verifying last time out. And I like his tactical gear. I think he can adapt to this hot pace and sit off of it. 1, 9, 5, and 10 for Mike. 1, 5, 6, 4 for me. Enjoy the Rebel at Oaklawn. Good luck.